The train tracks stretched endlessly across the golden autumn fields, their steel veins cutting through a world that felt both vast and unwelcoming. The air smelled of smoke and dust, heavy with the weight of promises broken and journeys unfinished. On a worn wooden bench at the station sat a young woman, her bare feet pressing against the cool planks, her trembling hands clutching a crumpled letter that had carried her across hundreds of miles. Her hair fell in loose, weary waves, her eyes wide yet shadowed with despair. She was a mail-order bride, summoned and then abandoned. Every passenger who stepped off the train had been met by eager smiles, warm embraces, and hopeful reunions. But she remained alone, her heart breaking a little more with each passing moment. She was unwanted, discarded like a forgotten parcel. Just as her last flicker of hope was about to be extinguished by the encroaching twilight, a small hand tugged at her skirt. A soft, trembling voice whispered 5 words that would change everything. "Will you be my mommy?" The young woman's name was Clara. She had grown up in a world where poverty left little room for dreams, where every day was a battle to survive, and where women often had no choice but to place their fate into the hands of strangers. When she had responded to an advertisement promising marriage, a home, and stability in the western frontier, Clara had seen it not as a chance for love, but as a desperate lifeline. She had sewn her few belongings into a small sack, sold the only shoes she owned to pay for her ticket, and traveled across states with the fragile belief that someone was waiting for her. Yet when the train arrived, no man stepped forward to claim her hand. She sat on that bench for hours, her hope sinking with every tick of the station clock, until hot tears welled in her eyes, and she was forced to accept that she had been cruelly deceived or utterly forgotten. It was in that moment of pure desolation that the little girl appeared. Barely 5 years old, with golden hair braided loosely and a patched teddy bear dangling from her hand, the child approached Clara with an innocence that pierced straight through the young woman's sorrow. Her eyes, round and searching, held no judgment, only a deep, aching longing. She asked that simple question, one that carried the weight of a loss too heavy for someone so young. "Will you be my mommy?" Clara's breath caught in her chest, for she saw in the child's eyes the same cavernous emptiness that had haunted her own. She learned the girl's father had died in a mining accident, and her mother, exhausted and frail, had not survived the harsh winter. She had been living with distant relatives who saw her not as a child to love, but as a burden to bear. And in Clara, this little girl saw something no one else could. The possibility of family, of warmth, of belonging. Clara wanted to say yes instantly, to scoop the child into her arms and never let her go. But she knew the world was not so simple. She was penniless, homeless, and a complete stranger in a town that had already cast its silent judgment upon her. Even so, the little girl's plea stirred something deep inside her, an ache she hadn't known she carried. The ache of wanting to matter, to be needed, to love and be loved in return. With trembling hands, Clara wiped her tears, held the child's small hand in her own, and whispered back that she would not leave her side. The townspeople watched from a distance, some with pity, others with sharp suspicion. In that small frontier town, strangers were often met with distrust, and a woman without a husband or protector was considered an outcast. Whispers followed Clara wherever she walked, and she quickly realized that survival would not come easily. She was offered scraps of work, washing heavy laundry until her knuckles were raw, scrubbing floors for a few cents, helping at the bakery where the smell of fresh bread was a constant torment. The wages were barely enough to buy bread for herself, let alone for the little girl she now protected. Nights were spent in the back of drafty barns or huddled beneath the stars, her arms wrapped tightly around the child to shield her from the cold. Hunger gnawed at her. Exhaustion threatened to break her spirit. Yet Clara refused to let go of the one soul who had given her a reason to fight. There were moments when despair clawed at her heart. She would sit alone after the child had fallen asleep, staring at the dark horizon, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps she should have boarded the next train and disappeared, leaving behind a town that so clearly didn't want her. But every morning, when the little girl's hand found hers in her sleep, and those wide, trusting eyes looked up at her. Clara felt strength return to her bones. For the first time in her life, she was no longer invisible. She was someone's hope, someone's safety, someone's mother in all but name. What Clara didn't know was that her quiet courage and fierce tenderness had not gone unnoticed. A local rancher, a quiet man named James, had watched her from afar. He had seen the way she shielded the child from the cold, how she worked tirelessly for pennies, how she endured the town's whispers without lashing out, and how she managed a gentle smile for the little girl, even when her own heart was clearly breaking. James was a widower, a man who had lost much himself, and he recognized in Clara a spirit forged not from ease, but from hardship. Slowly, cautiously, he began to step forward. He would offer food when he could, leave a neat stack of firewood near the barn where she slept, and create small jobs on his ranch that paid a little more than the rest. Clara, wary of men after her painful abandonment, resisted his help at first. But James's quiet consistency and the kindness in his eyes began to melt the walls she had built around her heart. Through storms, hunger, and endless days of toil, Clara and the little girl grew inseparable. She brushed her hair with gentle fingers, mended her torn clothes with thread she could barely afford, told her stories of faraway places at night, and kissed her forehead when she cried. The girl, who once walked with slumped shoulders and tear-stained cheeks, began to laugh again. She began to run barefoot through the fields, her small voice carrying on the wind. She began to believe in love once more. And Clara, who had arrived thinking herself completely unwanted, found that she had become the center of someone's entire world. The turning point came one crisp evening when the town gathered for its annual harvest festival. Clara, still in her plain brown dress, sat quietly at the edge of the celebration, holding the little girl's hand. She felt out of place among the music and laughter, certain she did not belong. But then James approached her with a steady, gentle smile and asked her to join in the dance. Something shifted in the cool night air. The town's people watched as the three of them, James, Clara, and the little girl, danced together under the warm glow of the lanterns. In that moment, judgment softened into acceptance, suspicion gave way to respect, and the cruel whispers turned into warm, welcoming smiles. For they finally saw not a discarded mail-order bride, but a woman of immense resilience and love who had taken in a lost child and given her back her laughter. They saw a quiet, lonely man find a spark of light again. They saw the messy, unexpected, and beautiful creation of a family, built not on contracts or convenience, but on the simple, powerful truth that home is not a place you are sent, but the place where you are needed most.